there's only one kind.
So I'm glad everybody's here. What we're going to talk about is the required business updates that we're facing and how it's important to our business and what happens if we don't follow them. So we're going to be going over NAR and RASM change updates, how to avoid fines, which is crazy, but anyway, addendum overview and usages. So this is for buyers and sellers. We need to make sure that we know that if we have a seller, they do need to sign a form now too. Of course, before we show anybody a house, we know we have to do some of these addendums, and we're going to get into that. But you need to be able to explain the addendum that you put in front of somebody. If you can't, they're going to look at you confused, you're going to look at them confused, and people that are confused typically don't want to do anything. They clam up. So they can get confused after you've explained it. That's typical. And that's really going to happen with this. There's people that I've explained this to over and over and over again with these various addendums, and they still look at me with blank stares. And it's like, I understand it's very confusing. I don't know why they've done this, but this is what it is, and it's now the law, and it's not up to me. We have to do it this way. So changes in doing business. This is straight off of our RASM. Before, brokers and agents had the ability to disclose offers, compensation. Now we can't, right? They've removed it. Before, brokers were not previously required to formalize transactions with a buyer broker. Now you have to. That's the bottom line, right? And it's prior to touring a home. You've got to do this prior to touring a home. And here's the fun part about that. We always did the loyalty agreements. The one we're going to review here really kind of mimics our loyalty agreement, but it locks them in with us very nicely. So it's hard for us to argue with. So we just want to go on with these things. It's good. So what's allowed in public remarks? When we're doing listings, it's important to know dollar amounts can be listed, of course. This used to be. This has already changed too. For general concessions, this just changed. It's hard to keep up. No, you may not say anything about concessions anymore in compensation at all. You just can't do it. But or even to paying towards buyer's closing costs. They keep changing it. Buyer benefits that do not allude or mention offers of compensation. I don't understand why this would be any kind of problem at all. And I'd be all over that one and make them call me on it. Oop, come back, go the right way. I got it.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. General statements that do not allude to or contain mentions of compensation, right? Seller will consider concessions if requested in an offer. It's just interesting that you cannot, and actually they are saying cannot now up here, so that's good. NAR's take on buyer brokers agreements. I don't know if you guys have read all these things or not, but it's just important to keep up. Buyer broker agreements help create a long-lasting and cooperative relationship through transparency and ensuring the customer connection, and you're building strong relationships with buyers. And this isn't a bad thing, this part. It's just that, removing the compensation part in the MLS drives me nuts. This part doesn't. So you're clarifying roles and responsibilities of both buyer's agents and the buyer. You're defining the compensation and commission, if any, will be paid. And of course, we want to be paid. So you need to make sure you have these things spelled out as well. No, not just presenting the forms, but filled in, right? Providing legal protection by formalizing the professional relationship. And it does. They're very clear about that. So how do we avoid fines? What'll get you fined? Ensuring compliance with buyer brokers agreements, right? So you need to do them, you need to fill them out properly and work through them. And it's really interesting though, because the MLS isn't collecting these. It's like, why wouldn't they? I think they would just be so inundated that they couldn't possibly keep up, right? So it's the brokerage's responsibility to have these. When you guys get these filled out, they've got to be done and put in our app files so they're trackable. And everybody's been doing pretty well with that. Effective August 6th, this was the one that came in. Any violation of the rule, they're going to get $500 fine. For first-time offenders. I don't know what's going to happen on second and third-time offenders, except they probably want to yank your license. Yeah. Jail time.
What are you in for?
Yeah.
Get it signed.
Gun it, I tried. Yeah, that's so funny. Key points. can see it now. What are you in for? Ah, me too. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Buyer broker agreements. So, but you know what you can do? If they don't want to sign that agreement before you get to the property to show them, a lot of people don't want to do it online. They want to have it explained to them. Bring it with you. Don't unlock that front door. Lay that up on the hood of your car and say, we need to review this because it's the law now. This literally has to be signed before I can open the door for you. And people are already there. Then they're going to be like, okay,
Never buy every single realtor. You will not find someone who does not have to have this done.
right.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't, they're breaking the law and they're going to get fined. And that's the way it works. So unless you go to an open house, yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. Oh, really? Who was showing you?
Yeah.
That'd be my question. Yeah. Buyer broker agreements, though, they do formalize this. It's the same thing that we just went over, the key points, relationship between you and your customers, and it defines those roles, expectations. They ensure an exclusive relationship, which is a beautiful thing for us, protects both the customer and the brokerage. You got to love that kind of thought process. So the National Association of Realtors is mandating that the following components be in any buyer's broker agreement. The specific amount or rate of compensation and how it will be determined must be clearly disclosed. This amount must be specific, easily verifiable, and not open-ended. Which not open-ended is interesting because we, in ours are putting in the if any. Yeah, what am I trying for? Any awards? Any? Oh my gosh. Bonuses. It would not come out of my head. Thank you, Chris. If any bonuses are paid, we're just saying that those bonuses are acceptable. That's rather open-ended, but yet it's really not because we don't know what that bonus might be. If they want us to clarify that more, I'm sure I'll get called on it. A clause prohibiting the brokerage from receiving more compensation services than the agreed amount or rate. Is that part, I don't understand why they're pushing it to this degree now. This is interesting because if a seller wants to pay more, well, why is that a problem for the associations? I don't know. And of course, I still don't understand why NAR settled. Anyway, personal opinions. I digress. The clear statement that broker fees and commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. This is, anyway, they've got it in every single one of them very clear for us. Yes,
So
Leah.
really quick, that's going into special clauses on the brokerage commission agreement, and we're just putting any bonuses paid by seller to buyer's agent are permitted. And just leaving it at that.
That's what I'm doing.
Keep it simple.
Yep, keeping it simple. It is somewhat open-ended, but again, until we get called on it, why wouldn't we state it that way? We might want to bounce that past one of the attorneys, Leah, just to verify that we are right, that we're in good shape. But I think that short and simple is usually the best bet for us, and anything that could be considered legal. Removal of optional concession fields. It's gone. People were using the concession fields to still be able to show that, hey, yeah, our seller's paying and they're willing to make a concession of up to 3%. And of course, that's being used to pay the buyer's broker. So that's gone now. And if anybody, any mention of that again, it's a $500 fine. And so there's that. But, all it really said was concessions, yes. Again, why is that a big deal? Because they're really trying to hog tie us into how this is done from now on. And it's okay. These are the rules. We got to follow them. So now we're going to roll into, Leah, we are going to roll into the actual agreements. And we're going to review these agreements because they are different. And just because we have one doesn't mean we don't need to use another one. And if you read the fine print on the bottom of these things, they all say the Florida Realtors make no representation of the legal validity, it would be easy for me to say, legal validity or adequacy of any provision of this form in a specific transaction. In other words, they're trying to protect themselves by saying, hey, this may or may not protect you. Fact of the matter is, this is what's been required, so this is what we're going to work with until something changes. But I think what they're also indicating is that, hey, if you're in a $1 million deal or a very expensive home, I would run this by the attorneys that are closing it and say, hey, is everything copacetic? Are we good with this? Right? That's the important thing to do. So right now, we're starting, and again, we're just going to run with whichever ones come in the order they have. Compensation. This is again all about compensation, right? But this is the modification form. So it's saying, hey, we already have something in place, and we want to modify it. So we want to, again, include the seller's name, the buyer's broker's name, and get this all signed and terms extended, whatever. Again, it is really about modification. And you guys have all done modifications before. So again, the big thing is seller's broker to buyer's broker amends the above referenced agreement between the above referenced parties. So we need to just know that this is typically going to be used broker to broker. Okay, that's the important part of this one. And I think that a lot of folks are a little confused, still thinking, oh, I'm just going to use this for my buyer. No, if you don't have it in writing from another broker that you're getting paid by them, you might not, and then you're dogging your buyer. We need to make sure and have broker to broker commission agreements in place. And I'm actually working on this with another one right now that I'm going to have them sign and have copies of this. So when people show, I want to present it immediately. You're covered. I think that that's the best way to do it. And in all of the forums that I've been studying this on, that is what the better agents are doing. And I call them better agents. The agents that have been in business for a long time, everybody's doing it that way.
Smarter agents.
There you go. This smarter agents. We want to be smarter agents. All right, Leah, next, does everybody understand what this one's for?
Yes.
So it's term, price, all of these things, broker to broker, and we're asking to modify it to cover this. This is for us. This is something, or this is what you would present to a buyer's agent when they show the property. They're going, hey, are we getting our commission? Is the seller paying? They go, yes. It's like, great. Do you have the broker to broker agreement? And a lot of people are going to go, huh? You're going to get a lot of what?
One seller to a buyer only, not the buyer to a seller.
No,
Correct. Okay.
no. This is from a selling broker to a buyer's broker.
So this is just putting in writing, if they say, yeah, we're paying out 3%, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
And,
Make it legit.
Yeah, and I know we're saying seller at the top, but it's really, if you go down, yeah, but go down to the paragraph in the middle. Seller to buyer's broker agreement. Well, okay, maybe this one's, and we're gonna help keep me in line too. Maybe this one is actually the seller to the buyer's broker. So maybe, yeah. So now reading it that way, thank you. Let's all work together because it's seller. This one is the seller to the buyer's broker, so maybe they don't have an agent representing them, or the selling broker is having the seller fill this out and giving it to the buyer's agent. Okay, so
Is this something like, could we add this to like the packet that we just keep on the counter with? So
You sure could. Yeah, you just can't put it in the MLS. Isn't that lovely?
I
Yeah.
thought that was gonna be our side step to be able to
So
put
do you
things
think
like
that
that.
this,
as
even
attachments.
though it's not official, like let's say, I don't know, notarized, it still holds them accountable to whatever percentage?
Still
Or
legit.
about-
Very similar to like the seller's disclosure in HOA. You're providing all the seller's
Yeah, but
information.
before at least we had that MLS to fall back into. Oh,
Yeah,
they said
sure.
on it,
That's
but
gone.
now we don't have anything, it's just this piece of
No.
paper that.
You
Right.
can attach to whoever's actually just gonna show the home, so.
Which is far better than just having somebody say, yeah, we'll pay that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like, okay, so like I'm previewing one tomorrow. The selling agent brokerage is paying 2.5% minus $4.95. It's like, whatever, that's fine. Just give me the buyer broker agreement, please. I want to see broker to broker agreement, actually,
Okay.
sorry. And again, this.
So this will go to broker agreement.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, or what if you've got a seller that's FSBO?
Yeah,
It would work perfect for that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way we're going to have to question these things, guys. Help me too, because this is a learning curve for all of us. And as much as I've studied this, I'm still going, okay, because they keep changing stuff.
There are, yeah, we have it in here. So we have seller to buyer's broker and we
Yep.
have seller's broker to buyer's broker.
There you go. Well, keep going. We're going to get to it. Well, eventually. No, you're doing great, Leah. So this is the exclusive buyer broker agreement, or one of two that are optional, okay? And again, either one is going to work for you. The way we broke these down, it really helped me when Leah and I sat down and did them like this. What's the differences? Each one has some good things. Personally, I've been having people sign this one. Now that I've,
Specific, because they can't see it.
Oh,
in the
sorry.
recording.
It's not
I
that.
have been having
Okay.
people sign
Okay.
this one that's up now, but the more I'm looking at it, I really like the other one, which we'll get to, but let's run through this real quick. So again, fill it in, guys. It's the consumer on this one, or on the other one, it's a buyer. It's like, okay, they're just, I don't know why they're, anyway, the consumer is the buyer. So you fill that in, fill in everything you need. The term, we need to put a term in here, guys. And, you know, it's also a protection deal. So here's the only way that goes away is if somebody says you're fired and has another one filled out by another buyer's agent, yeah, you're kicked to the curb. It's just like when a listing expires, if somebody else lists that property, you're out of luck on any protection periods. Even though it's not really true if there's unconditional withdrawal. But anyway, just saying these are things to consider, okay?
Since you mentioned it right now, how do you go from, let's say they have this sign with another realtor and they wanna now work with you, you say, yeah, you're fired, but do they have to physically have it in writing? Or
I would.
verbal?
I would have them pull up their agreement and sign on it that they're canceling that agreement. Personally, I'd send it over to the other buyer broker and say, hey, so you know, they've chosen to work with me. It's a way to protect yourself.
Okay.
And again, these things spell out a lot of that. It spells out your obligations, all the fair housing things. Keep going, Leah. But the one I like about is they're at least talking about type of property and location, which is a plus. And then the consumer obligations, right? But where was it when I read? Let me look at my note. The breaking it. Anyway, keep going. So retainers, here's another option. We can get retainers, guys. And this one is a non-refundable. On the other form, it's going to say refundable or non-refundable, or it applies to the transaction. This one is non-refundable. Why wouldn't people sign this if it's just the way it is? So non-refundable retainer fee of $500 goes to the brokerage. And again, that's going to fall under splits and everything else. Any money that comes in to the brokerage is run on splits. It's just the way it is. But it's earned and payable upon execution of the agreement. And that retainer is compensation earned. So it's kind of nice because you're getting at least something to pay for your fuel. And people are like, well, what's that for? Well, just my fuel even for driving you around in all these properties. That's reasonable, isn't it? $500 for fuel. Have you seen the price of fuel? How many properties am I going to show you? We're just estimating right now, but yeah, I appreciate you taking care of me, and I'll take good care of you. Be ready to answer these questions. Compensation. Here's where it comes down. You can say 5% on this if you want to, if somebody's willing to sign it. The typical I'm going for is 3% plus 295 because that's what we have typically done. Neither do I mind if you go 3% plus 495. We've had other agents that do that and people are willing to sign it. Okay, that's fine. And again, it just spells those things out. If you have any problem filling these things out, get with us. We'll sit down and explain it again and we'll go through it together. And you need to be comfortable with it. So when you present this, it just needs to be, it is what it is, right? So protection period. Here's the thing that I'm talking about. Same thing with listings, right? If you've been showing people properties, if blank 30 days, you know how many people will dog you and wait 30 days to save 3% on a purchase? A lot. A lot of people have ethics issues. So let's help keep their ethics in line and put 180 days in there. Why not? If they're working with you, they're taking care of you. And this is simply a matter of, guys, it's just properties I've shown you. It's if you see another one at another time and this is expired, it doesn't count. I'm not trying to hold you to that. But if I've shown you properties, you're going to make sure I get taken care of, right? This is just smart, guys. We're getting paid. And honestly, I think that this is going to help us make more money and get paid. It's important. So that protection period is important. Okay, conditional termination. This is something that this is the part I was getting at. At consumer's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If broker agrees to conditionally terminate the agreement, consumer must enter a written agreement to this effect and pay a cancellation fee. So personally, that written agreement can be right on this that it's canceled, period, signed. And you can have a fee for that. So again, it may be $1,000 if you're spending a ton of time with them. Broker may void the conditional termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in the compensation paragraph unless less the cancellation fee. This gets a little confusing to me. From the earlier termination date to the termination date plus protection period. If applicable, customer contracts to acquire any property which, prior to the early termination date, was found by the customer or called to customer's attention by the broker or any other person. So it's protecting you, right? So, and then they've got dispute resolution here. This one's nice because it clearly spells out that we're going to the arbitration and it's a binding arbitration, which is nice for everybody. Everybody initials this, which I like as well. So it's nice the way it goes through the mediators and works that way instead of going to litigation, which costs everybody money, except for the attorneys, which are very happy to see it.
That one as well.
Yes.
So it's like the agent and broker, for both?
On this one, remember, on certain things,
I see two lines, two
Yes.
initials, so.
Broker would be on the left. and
Oh, that,
so
yeah.
on the left,
I
you
thought
would be
you
on the
meant
right.
up above.
No, right there, yeah.
Okay, yeah, at the bottom, yes, that's both. At the top, it can be either of us, okay?
Whenever you see this, it's always indicative of
Yeah.
telling you
The first
broker will
person.
be on the
Mhm.
left, agent will be on the right.
And the good part about that is then you know that if I have to sign it, I'm gonna read it. So it'll help keep you guys safe, is the goal. So brokerage relationship. Brokers acting as a transaction broker. It's like they're spelling out things that have been clear for years, but a lot of people don't understand them until they get into a real estate transaction, right? So you're disclosing all the facts, material affecting properties, and all of those good things. Other terms. That's where we've been putting in right now that if there are bonuses paid, the buyer's brokerage is allowed to accept them. Okay, and you can call us for exact wording. Acknowledgement, modifications. It's just, here they clarify again, brokers' commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. That's always been the case. Broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount of the rate agreement from the consumer, right? And then the important thing to look at this too, let's go, because people are going to ask this. Go back to compensation on line.
Correct.
Yes, go back
Anything
to,
more on this is always going to be
Right.
higher.
so go back to compensation, please, Leah, because this is important right there. Because we're going to have sellers that are asking, isn't the buyer paying the broker now? Everywhere I'm reading, it's saying that that's the way it works. And it's like, they can, but a lot of people don't want that. They still don't want that because they can't roll it into their mortgage. Of course, the property has to appraise, but if the seller is still willing to quote unquote pay that, and then, so you've got to break it down too, of who's really paying for it. And they're going, well, I'm the seller then, right? Well, who's bringing the money to the table? The buyer. So the buyer in reality has actually always been paying our fees. It's just broken out differently in my opinion. But here is the important part. The compensation for broker services, nope, up above. When compensation's earned, the term of the contract, the part I wanted to get to is compensation received by broker, if any, from an owner or owner's brokers for services rendered or consumer will be reduced by the amount owed by consumer per this paragraph. In other words, you're not collecting from a seller and from the buyer. And so if you can actually, if the seller is paying 2.5%, minus $495, and you've got this signed at 3% plus 295, you're getting your 0.5%, plus you're getting your 295 still, right?
Yep.
Or if, it's just, or 495, whatever that number may be. I'm not gonna judge you guys on that. If you can get people to sign off on it, fine. That's part of being a salesman.
It's 100%.
Are we,
Mhm.
I have a legal question and we didn't know how to approach it. Are we able to negotiate the price for the errors? What's it called?
Oh, errors and omissions? Yeah,
Yeah.
with that, you could add it on to the 295.
Add it on to the 295.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that.
Okay.
Let's go to the next one. Yeah, that was really everything in that one that we wanted to
Should I
cover.
move this over so that I'm not getting lost because I had a little bit of a system?
That's cool, but I do want to go to the other buyer
Yeah.
broker agreement.
This one
Thank you.
spells it out a little bit more.
This one is a lot like our loyalty agreement. I think that people may be more comfortable signing this, but honestly, I haven't had any problem getting anybody to sign either one of them.
I've had questions on it,
Right.
but
They sign them. So we're going to continue to study these. I'm going to continue to take classes on these too. And I'm going to talk to some attorneys about these to make sure that I understand the full differences of them and which one's the most beneficial to us. And that's the one we're going to put in front of our buyers, right? So it's just important. But this one, I do like the way it spells out everything the way we always have: buyer, price range, pre-qual, preferred terms and conditions. These are nice things to know. Preferred terms and conditions. That condition may be, don't show me properties where the seller's not paying commission.
or the seller's not paying commission up to, or
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, or whatever however we want to phrase it there, but that would be a condition. So, our obligations remain the same as a broker assistant in what we're doing, being professionals, and all the fair housing laws and making sure of those things, right? You guys go back and read these. Please read them and highlight your question marks because you're gonna have some, and read it as though you're the buyer. What would you ask as a question? What would you not understand? Because it's going to continue to go that way. Buyer authorizes broker to run a credit check on me. What? That's on 5B. We're allowed to run a credit check on them, and of course, we personally don't want to run credit checks and pay for things like that. But we should be able to present this then to our lenders and say, hey, they're already saying you can do it. All right. Personally, I wouldn't still do that without bringing it to the buyer's attention. We don't want to surprise buyers. Some people will, but we don't want to do that. How about this retainer section? It's kind of interesting because, again, this one is different from the other. Fees not refundable and will or will not be credited to the buyer as if compensation is earned as specified in this agreement. So this is where, again, it brings it to the forefront that it may or may not be refundable. The other one that's nice is it's just not refundable. Okay, so again, I've used the other ones so far, but I really want to, again, talk to some of the attorneys about this.
Putting any amounts in that section, what is the amounts that you guys have personally?
I
been
haven't.
using?
Retainer, I've been totally comfortable with $500.
I'll put 500.
That's what I've put. I think that's it. And again, it depends on the buyer, right?
Yeah.
If they're looking at $1 million property, you might be able to put $2,500 in
Are
there
you
and they
guys
don't blink an eye.
doing will or not?
I'm doing will be credited if compensation is earned.
Yeah.
So again, if I get paid, it goes back to you. If we don't, then you're covering me for my time or a portion of my time. If I ever actually broke it down hourly, you'd be embarrassed by what you'd be paying me. Okay?
How are buyers supposed to get this retainer fee to us?
They need to write a check to the brokerage.
Like in advance or?
When this is signed, and again, they just need to send it to the brokerage. Yeah. All right.
So, are you saying sending it, so it has to be addressed to Elements Realty and then giving us the check and then we give it to you?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And if they don't have a check at the address when you're opening a property for them, don't let it stop you from showing them property, of course. But I try and get these things done ahead of time personally. And that way people have a chance to ask questions. Others are like, let's just get together and I'll do it when I'm there. You know, I love it when people start with that, because that usually means I don't want to read it. And it's like, okay. So, and that's the type D personality, right? You gotta know the personalities you're working with. My one seller right now is definitely very analytical. And so she's come up with questions in these things that I've had to go back and go, I don't know, but let me read it again and I'll find the answer and I'll bring it back to you. And I've actually printed these off and given them to her. I'm like, read it. This is what the law has us doing right now. And she's come back with it. I still don't get it, but okay, perfect. Me either. I don't know why they're in place, but here we are. So buyer will be responsible for paying broker the amount specified plus any applicable taxes, but will be credited with any amount which broker receives from a seller or real estate licensee who is working with a seller. That's a big line on this one too, line 7, right? So a seller knows that's the way it's going to work. Let's go to early termination. Buyer may terminate this agreement at any time by written notice to the broker, but will remain responsible for paying broker's compensation from the early termination date to the termination date, plus protection period if applicable. Yes, it's applicable, guys. Buyer contracts to acquire any property which prior to the early termination date was found by buyer or called to buyer's attention by broker or any other person. Broker may terminate this agreement at any time by written notice to buyer, which in any event, buyer will be released from further obligations under this agreement. In other words, they can fire us and we can fire them. That's always been the case too, but this really spells it out. And then it goes through the same dispute resolution, which I think is wonderful. And that's that. All right, so we already did the two buyers brokers agreement. And again, guys, if you know these things, it's no different than any other form they're signing. People are used to signing forms when they're buying and selling things. But we need to be able to explain them within reason. And you can even start with, look, I'm not an attorney. These are written by attorneys, not me. But right. I didn't write this. Yeah. And here's the other thing. If you handwrite on these agreements, what these percentages are and what your retainers are and these things, they will be challenged more than if it's done through app files and done in a printed manner that way. Is always easier for people to accept for some reason than handwritten. So up to you on whether you handwrite it on a hood of a truck or car or do it the other way, but I think it's smarter to do it the other way. Even if you're meeting them and having them sign it on the site, I would have it pre-filled out. Okay, so which one are we on, Leah? Compensation agreement, seller to buyer's broker.
Oh, wait,
We already did that one. So let's do seller's agreement with respect to buyer's broker compensation. No, that's fine. That's good. No, that's fine. Sellers, okay.
There we go. Seller's broker, buyer's broker.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just gotta find the one in here because I highlighted certain things on some of these. Owner listing to tenant. There we go. All right. So on this one, again, seller's broker to buyer's broker. So this is broker to broker, obviously, right? And the big thing on this one to me is in paragraph 5, of course, fill in all the blanks. Don't leave anything blank. You know, I hate blanks. Blanks get you hurt. And you want to fill in your terms. Everything filled in. Seller's broker will compensate buyer's broker as stated at closing of property if buyer identified, yada, yada, yada. It's just saying you are going to be covered. Buyer's broker is going to compensate you, or seller's broker is going to compensate you. And that's the important thing to know. And it's a beautiful thing. If you're procuring cause, of course, there is that. There are those that try to get in on things that they had no part of, just thinking they can easily get somebody to cut them a check because they never showed a property and yet they wrote an offer on it. That can actually be challenged. So you know. Okay, so we want to use this one. The only other thing I have is on 7. Miscellaneous clauses, I highlighted at the bottom, brokers' commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. In no event will buyer's broker compensation exceed the amounts. You need to know this. What you've agreed to with the buyer is not going to be exceeded. Okay, that's it. Next,
Unless it's a bonus.
unless it's a bonus. But that's not exceeding what you've agreed to.
No, 'cause it's written.
It's written. If you don't write it in,
Also have to be filled with, let's say, with new bills that they already have,
Any
'Cause-
buyer.
absolutely.
but they're the ones that do the contracts normally.
That's fine.
So then you just send them that form as
I,
well.
I'm assuming, which is not safe, that builders are going to have these things pre-filled out.
There,
Mhm. If they don't, we bring it to them and say, hey, this is the law now.
And it's the same thing as we used to do with our loyalty agreement, which would specify the 295 that they would have to put in the Alta settlement statement at the end. We just have to present this on the front end because it's CYA for you. Or CYB, cover your butt.
Mhm.
okay, what if you went into contract before the law, but you're not to close after, like a few months after, not that the law is in place?
You already have the contract in
Your
hand,
grandfather.
and their contract's going to specify what your commission agreement is anyway.
Okay.
Most builders' contracts have this built into it already. So I think you're going to find that you probably don't even need this with a builder.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, because I have not seen this form, and I've done a few, but they're not, this form was not obviously specific like that. They're
Okay.
in the contract, so that still counts.
Right. But if it's not
Oh,
clearly
okay.
in the contract, I'd certainly use this.
Okay.
Because there are small builders that are still catching up with the wave too, and there
Yeah.
are folks that just don't put things in that need to, and they're going, oh, yeah, you're covered, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, fine, then sign here.
Yeah, okay.
My apologies, I was still on the train of the exclusive brokerage. buyer
Yeah,
agreement.
no, more like commission
Yeah.
part of it, yeah.
Right on. So, let's go to the next one, Leah. Or, yeah, that's the compensation,
Yeah, this is the modification.
modification, we already did.
Not with seller's broker, buyer's.
Oh,
broker.
seller's poker, okay. Yes, we did.
What we did?
Wait, no, go back up. Wrong one. See, these are confusing.
Uh-huh.
This one was seller to buyer's broker.
Yeah.
This is seller's broker to buyer's broker. So again, it's broker to broker. And it's if there's a modification. So let me go there.
Well, and the main difference on this is gonna be right down here. In need of it, the modification of compensation agreement, seller's broker to buyer's broker amends the above reference agreement between the above reference parties. All other non-conflicting provisions of that agreement remain in force and effect.
Good, because apparently I didn't even copy or do that one. Golly.
In no event will buyer's broker commission exceed the amount of compensation
Yeah.
in the written agreement with buyer.
No, they're
So,
about the same.
Again, though, if you have one commission agreement with that broker and something changes, it needs to be modified, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just like when we have listings and we have listing modification forms, right? Extending a listing, changing prices, all of those things are required to be on that listing modification form. So same thing with that. Seller's agreement with respect to buyer's broker compensation. Okay, that's this one. So again, this is seller's broker and buyer's broker. Seller and buyer's broker executing a compensation agreement with terms acceptable to buyer, right? You fill it out and have buyer and sellers both have to initial it. This is going to closing. And again, you want to have it pre-done by either your seller, if you're working with a seller, or by the buyer, if you're working with the buyer. This can be part of your pre-list or pre-sale package. And so it just is what it is. They're just clarifying that, gosh, surprise, broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Duh. Always has been.
Well, this is the big bit. If it's not executed and delivered within 3 days after,
Then it can terminate the contract.
effective date, yeah, walk away and their deposit back. So,
Yeah. So what it is it's telling the buyer that the seller is agreeing to do something, right?
All right.
Okay. Everybody good on that one? Compensation agreement.
It's very confusing on which one you have to use.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why we're doing
So,
this.
call us.
And,
That's for most video.
yep, there you go.
Well,
and-
by then it might have changed.
And read them all. Well, that's what's getting me is things change.
Give it a week.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, for sure. No concessions. Wait, you're allowed concessions. Now you're not. Okay, which is it? Yes or no? So now we're doing owner listing broker to tenants broker. This is, what's a tenant? Somebody's renting. Yep. So again, that's what this part's for if we're involved in those things. And again, the big thing is on item 4, owner listing broker will compensate them as stated below when the tenant executes a lease with the owner. Okay? So that's when you get what, $100 or whatever it may be. Yeah, you can modify it. But again, the other big thing on all of these, go to the very bottom. Don't let it whip you. Keep going. Florida realtors make no representation as to the legal validity or adequacy of any provision of this form in specific transaction. Let your attorneys that you work with read these things to make sure in a transaction, if you've got any question marks, that it's clear and that it actually covers you in that transaction. That's beyond what I'm able to do, right? Okay, any other questions on this? I mean, I don't think many of us do a lot of leases anyway, but if we do, and as we're helping people, we get paid for it. Okay, I'll take $100 for a referral fee. Credit related to buyer's broker compensation. I think again, this, you read the whole thing. Buyers entered into a separate agreement, not incorporated here too, or at closing, seller agrees to credit buyer the sums or sum described below, which for disclosure purposes by the parties agree is related to buyer's obligation under buyer broker agreement to pay all or a portion of the broker's compensation. And in here, again, if we know that someone is willing to pay 3% to you, you put 3% in here, right? And you get the buyer and seller to both initial it. And that goes to the closing table. Let's see, anything else? Oh, yeah. In the event the credit described above exceeds the amount allowed for such contributions to the extent permitted by the buyer's lender. It's, of course, things have to be able to be cleared by the buyer's lender. If not, then the balance can be credited, will be paid directly to the seller or directly to the buyer broker, or the credit will be reduced to the maximum amount allowed by the buyer's lender. Okay? So again, you've got a signed buyer's broker agreement. Let's clarify. You've got a signed buyer's broker agreement. You take a buyer to a property, and they've said that they're good to 3%. And they're blinking their eyes because they don't know what they just signed. They didn't read it. And you get into a transaction where the seller is paying the buyer broker. They're only paying 2.5%. And the lender is only allowing it to go to a certain percentage level. You have to decide, do you want to get in that, keep in the transaction or not? And here's how. Okay. That's the way do you understand what I said?
No,
Okay.
no.
So in other words, the buyer doesn't have the money to pay you.
Yeah.
You're accepting whatever the seller's right. You're willing to accept whatever the seller has, or is willing to pay you. That's the way I read this. Again, it can also go the other way. The balance of the credit will be paid by seller directly to the buyer broker. I like that even better.
Yep.
I want to be paid by them in full if possible, still. And so in the event the credit described above exceeds, you're not going to get it. Okay. Next.
This is the last one. Compensation disclosure statement.
The following disclosure should be given to the buyer, seller, owner if the existing listing agreement or buyer's agreement does not contain the following disclosure. So basically, any listing we currently have needs to have this signed. I need to get one signed now. But as a result of the National Association of Realtors proposed settlement agreement and related practice changes, the following disclosure is required. It's just saying that it's negotiable. Notice to buyer and seller. Brokerage compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. I thought that was in our documents anyway. Now I gotta go back and read the whole listing agreement again and find that. Awesome. So, these are important things to consider, guys.
Our packages have these forms included in it? Or we have to fish every single form out?
Miles has it,
But
just like any other form you're going to have to.
Yeah, but you know what, like when you open up, for example, like it says like, oh, you have a new buyer, like the options.
checklist?
Yeah, is those forms in there?
I'm gonna have to update those. Right now, I only have it to where the updated ones, the new ones are
Okay.
going to have the buyer brokerage agreement in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't even think that the app files group has this updated yet, and they update automatically in the system on new forms. But it's changing so quickly that a lot of these things may not be in place yet. And even for us, getting them in there, you still need to pick which one.
For peace you can find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush not, child,